12 News Eye on Agriculture with Brityne Rucker.
Coming up, John Deere is facing some rough terrain. The agricultural giant has just slashed its profit forecast for the year. Find out what's behind the dip and how it's affecting farmers. As the heat returns to Kansas, so does the risk of heat-related illnesses to our livestock herds. We'll talk with Jess the vet about what you can do now to help limit your risk later on. Good evening and welcome into Eye on Agriculture. I'm Brityne Rucker. Severe storms last week brought some much-needed moisture to farmers and ranchers. Let's get over to meteorologist Adrian Camp for a look at the latest on rainfall totals and a look at your drought map.
That's right, Brityne. So thankfully, those rain and thunderstorms really did help out. So we've seen some improvements around the state, down to 67% of Kansas in drought and 27% still in severe. Still a long ways to go for southwest into central Kansas, but looking ahead at the next couple of weeks, I do think we'll start to keep an active weather pattern around the area with above average chances of precipitation, especially out in southwestern Kansas for areas that really need it. So signs are looking good for more beneficial moisture around the Sunflower State.
Thank you, Adrian. And last week's thunderstorms also brought damage. Check out these pictures from Rush County. Severe weather left behind damage at a farm near Rush Center. Candy sent us these images saying that this is her mother's farm. Exciting news from Kansas State University. Last week, Kansas State celebrated the groundbreaking of the Global Center for Grain and Food Initiative in Manhattan. This state-of-the-art facility will house the College of Agriculture's Department of Grain, Science, and Industry. A comprehensive plan involving over $200 million in new construction and renovations. This initiative aims to position Kansas State as a leading next-generation land-grant university. Ernie Minton, Dean of the College of Agriculture, expressed the positive impact this center will have on future students, faculty, and stakeholders.
This really represents the teaching and research and innovation that occurs on the value-added side of both grain and livestock food products. Very, very important to the economy of the state of Kansas and obviously very important for our students as well.
We want to be ahead of the curve. We want to be where the world is coming to learn about agriculture rather than being reactive to what's happening around the country and happening around the world. Buildings are a start to be able to get there. The next piece is supporting programs, technologies, and ultimately people and leaders that will drive us forward.
This is set to be completed in the summer of 2026. The center will feature labs, industry partner spaces, and modern research and teaching facilities. It will also foster collaboration between public and private sectors, dedicating 30% of its space for joint efforts in tackling complex agricultural challenges. Governor Laura Kelly announces $6.65 million for rural road safety improvements in 10 counties. That money, which comes from federal funding, will go towards 10 projects aimed at increasing safety and efficiency of local roadways. A project here in Sedgwick County receiving the most of federal funding at $1.6 million. It's for the road many have complained about the conditions of, West MacArthur from 215 to K42 just south of Goddard. Sedgwick County will add to the funding with over $1.1 million. A case of bird flu has been reported in a farm worker in Michigan. State and federal health officials say that the worker had regular exposure to infected livestock and is being monitored due to that exposure. The person reported only eye symptoms and has since recovered. This is now the second human case reported as part of the ongoing U.S. virus outbreak. A case in Texas was reported back in March, and that patient also recovered with no lasting problems. Health officials say the risk to the general public remains low. Well-known ag equipment maker John Deere once again lowering its profit forecast for this year. It's now forecasting $7 billion in income as opposed to the previous estimate of $7.5 billion. It says the cut is due to declining sales of tractors and combines, which is driven by lower commodity prices, which of course is impacting farm incomes. It is now predicting a 20 to 25% drop in large ag equipment sales. It did, however, report second quarter results this week that beat Wall Street's expectations. The Biden administration plans to release 1 million barrels of gasoline in the coming weeks. The 42 million gallons of gasoline will come from strategic reserves that are located in Maine and New Jersey. The sale isn't expected to have a significant impact at prices at the pump. Last year, the U.S. consumed an average of around 9 million barrels of gasoline a day. So the 1 million barrels set to be released only makes up a portion of national daily use. Still to come, there's a new push in Washington to get more young people into agricultural careers. How one sector hopes to keep them from drowning in debt. Hey, welcome back in to Eye On Agriculture. I'm Brityne Rucker. Even though it's May, heat stress has or will soon hit our cattle herds. We're with Jess the vet from the Hillsborough Vet Clinic with tips to help us have a successful summer. Jess, as always, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. You know, Brityne, as always, when we talk about certain environmental issues that can affect our cattle herds, I always say preparation is key. And on the heat stress side, I really think there's 3 things that we can focus on, and that is water supply, shade, and airflow. So fresh water and hydration is essential for an animal to stay cool. Making sure that there are multiple watering sites within pastures or on the feedlot side, making sure that our waters are functioning correctly are all things that we can do ahead of time. Most animals on pasture do a really good job of finding shade and airflow, but on the feedlot situation, you know, considering building shelters or purchasing pre-made shades is something that we can do right now. When building the shelters, be sure that you consider space and airflow when you do that, because we definitely don't want animals to start piling up on top of each other to get to that shade.
Absolutely. Jess, if we do get into a heat stress situation, what can we do?
Don't panic. There are a few things that we can do to help these animals. Although we can't control the weather, we can offer more water sources within the area. So using water tanks to place throughout the pens to spread the animals out. During the cooler hours of the night, we could consider moving animals to an area with more shade, or even spreading animals out to different pens so that there is more space. Feeding the animals early in the morning helps cut down on them being bunched together when it's so hot. If it is a specific individual animal, we can certainly offer electrolytes or even IV fluids to help hydrate them. One thing that I do want to mention, and it's more of a caution, is people tend to want to go right away and wet down the animals. This works great if we have good airflow. If we do not have good airflow, it can actually increase the humidity in the environment, making heat stress worse.
Yeah, kind of creating a steamy situation. Jess, is there any telltale signs of our animal is in heat stress and we need to call you, the vet?
So the one thing that I always tell people is it's not normal for a cow to pant. So if you start to see open mouth breathing, or even, you know, they get down and kind of stretch that neck out and start to hang their tongue out when they're breathing, that means that they're pretty stressed.
Yeah, and I want to hit on how dangerous heat stress can be really quickly.
Absolutely. So it can cause animals to die. There's no doubt about that. But one thing, when we are considering the expenses that go into preparing for managing heat stress, I do want to point out the production losses that occur during a heat stress situation. So on a cow-calf side, there are definite reproductive losses. On a feedlot side, there can be an absolute decrease in their daily rate of gain or their daily feed intake. And so this definitely affects our bottom line.
Well, Jess, thanks so much for coming on the program today. Everyone stick around. Eye On Ag will be back after the break. Welcome again to Eye On Agriculture. I'm Brityne Rucker. A new bill in Washington is hoping to attract more young farmers to the agriculture industry. 12 News Washington correspondent Molly Martinez reports it comes during an uncertain time for many family farms.
The farming industry is facing 2 major problems right now. The first one is age. The average American farmer is 58 years old, which means we're on the precipice of a wave of retirements with no replacements in sight. The second is cost. According to data from the Department of Agriculture, it costs about $226,000 to run a farm annually. But a new bill is hoping to solve both of these problems at once. The Student Loan Forgiveness for Farmers and Ranchers Act is an offshoot of a program that forgives loans for those who go into public service. The idea is to unsaddle would-be farmers with onerous debt so that they can have a leg up starting a farm. Senator Tina Smith of Minnesota, who's behind the bill, says already there are too many barriers.
One of them, of course, is lack of access to capital and just the cash that it takes to buy or rent land to get going or to purchase the equipment that you need. If you have a big student debt hanging over your head, it makes it even harder to put that cash together.
This legislation is not a part of the farm bill that is currently being negotiated. Senator Smith says right now it's a Democratic bill, but she's very hopeful that Republicans will get on board too. In Washington, I'm Molly Martinez.
Thanks so much for joining us for Eye On Agriculture. I'm Brityne Rucker, and I'll see you here next week.